Harry Enton was pointing out over on CNN, actually the biggest search terms being associated with Donald Trump's name now have to do with they're eating their dogs, eating the cats, eating the pets, Haitian situation, which we're about to talk about with Zed Jelani, but let's take a listen to Enton's analysis there.
Yeah, what are the rising things that people are Googling along with Donald Trump's name? It's not what Donald Trump's campaign would necessarily want, right? It's eating pets. It's eating dogs. It's eating cats. Obviously, that was Donald Trump's moment on the debate stage. Of course, that's a Fugazi story. It's not real. It's fake, yet he went after it. This is a disaster. Who the heck, if you're running a presidential campaign, that you'd want your name being Googled with eating pets, eating dogs, eating cats? My goodness gracious.
Well, I mean, maybe he thinks it's a win.
Well, he's wrong.
Knows?
So they do think it's a win. Trump, at least, thinks it's a win.
He thinks it's a win. So does JD. I'll save all my comments. I'm going to save all my comments.
Say something now, because we'll get Zed in the next one. So go ahead and just give us your top line thoughts on this.
I think that they are making the same mistake that they all made during Stop the Steal, which is they believe that anything that directionally points or causes argument around the issue that they think they are going to win on, like immigration, they believe that anything is justified in talking about, in backing up, in not surrendering on, in order to focus the conversation. Now, as I had said to them at that time, I think they're fundamentally incorrect, because I think, lying to people is, I'm going to put morals out of it. Lying to people or saying things that are incorrect give you too much to be discredited on, where people say, then I don't believe anything that you say. So for example, Stop the Steal. Everyone was like, look, it's not about bamboos and Mike Lindell and all of us. I'm like, well, Trump thinks it is, but they're like, it's about mail-in balloting laws in the state of Pennsylvania. I go, hey bro, but that's not what people are talking about.
Right.
You guys are saying that the election should not be certified because the Pennsylvania Supreme Court made a ruling on mail-in ballots. That's not the same thing that you're talking about. So you want to talk about Haitians? Let's talk about it all day long, about TPS, the legitimacy of migrant law, asylum, etc. I think that's a winning issue for Republicans, and polls show that. But when you start claiming people are eating pets and dogs, and then when you get discredited on that, and then even worse, you start to take anecdotal evidence as fact in and of itself, the current defense is, my constituents say, listen, I'm going to give you news. Most people who are interested in politics are stupid and weird. Like, if you are at the local level, and by the way, I include myself in that. So if you are at the local level and you're calling your congressman, I've manned enough of these phones. If you have the time out of the middle of your day to call your congressman and complain, you're a freaking weirdo, 98% of the time. So that we're just gonna take these people's word? I mean, how many times do we see these bullshit election affidavits that were completely fake? Fake. You know, and Stop the Steal. Oh, I saw this, blah, blah, blah. Fake. Did an investigation. Fake. Oh, saw this. Judge literally looks at it, laughs, and throws it out of the courtroom. They see that as evidence of conspiracy, which is part of the issue. So, I mean, in general, they have this idea of directional truth. Now, look, in their defense.
Directional truth.
For real.
It's such a dystopian concept.
It is, but I'll give their defense on this, is that Trump tells small lies to tell bigger truths. Like, he tells small lies about Haitians to get us talking about X, Y, and Z. And, you know, I have to take myself out of it. In 2016, when shit like this was happening, when he did the Khazir Khan, Access Hollywood, The Judge, you know, all this stuff, I was like, there's no way this guy could win. And he still won. So maybe they are right, and maybe their theory is correct. I don't think there's enough recent evidence to show that it's right.
Yeah.
I think he looks stupid. I actually think that what it does is it validates this idea of, well, anything, it validates like Russiagate. Oh, because we have Oleg Deripaska and a dossier that Christopher Steele put together that says, you know, X, Y, and Z, we spent 2 years as a country litigating that, and Democrats, rightfully, where I think were eviscerated for believing that, you know, Donald Trump peed on somebody and there was a video of it. That's the same, you know, thing that you're doing here. We're like, oh, well, I heard from my neighbor's daughter's friend on Facebook.
By the way, the Facebook lady is like,
and she
regrets putting it up there. She's like, and she heard it from like somebody, it was like third-hand potential possibility.
My top line is just, listen, you know, I think people are smart, and I think they're actually a lot smarter than you give them credit for. And I think when you are telling lies and they see through that, they both don't trust you. And, you know, this whole jujitsu, there's this high IQ jujitsu that goes on. I called it high IQ Stop the Steal at the time. I don't think it works. I just don't. I think that poll after poll after poll says the chaos and all the stuff around Trump is actually what people feel exhausted by. That's part of the reason he lost the 2020 election. Stop the Steal was a huge hindrance to them in 2022. I see no evidence that it will work this time. Listen, they're the ones running, so maybe they are right. And if they win, I'll eat it. But I don't know. I mean, at the very least, like personally, I think it's ridiculous and stupid. But listen, there's maybe enough people who the pets thing gets them thinking about the migrant situation, and that's enough for them to vote Republican. Again, I don't see evidence recently that is correct. I think it's actually a really bad way to do politics. I also think, for them too, you're betting everything on the line here, guys. Like, if you lose, you're done. Like, think about it. In terms of being taken seriously as a party apparatus, I know Trump is exempt from this just because he's like bigger above that category. But for everybody else, JD included, you're a young man, dude. You got to live your whole life in this town. If you lose, you're going to be one of those senators who's a lifer. You want to be like Josh Hawley, put his fist up and hasn't seen the light of day in 4 years? I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why?
Yeah,
why would we do this?
He's all in now.
Well,
and there's no
now
going
you
back.
have no choice.
There's
over.
no going back.
It is genuinely over.
Yeah.
Like, you either win, everything. You either win or, in my opinion, like, sign up for the Hawley category. Like, enjoy.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's a fun place to be.
Well, we were talking about this on Thursday after our show.
Yeah.
And I said, because we were looking at the poly market odds on whether Trump was going to say cat
Yes.
at the
It was
rally.
like 32%. He didn't say it, by the way. He said pets.
But I said, he's going to talk about this
Yeah.
because he thinks this is good for him because he can't tell the difference between good and bad publicity. He thinks any attention on him is good. And it's been driving him crazy that he's not been the main character. So the public has developed some, and the media and the political class, everybody's developed some immunity to Trump's insanity over the years. So the things that send the media into a tizzy that worked in 2016, they don't work the same way in 2024, right? Like she turned black thing. Everyone was, for one day, like, what the hell? And then they moved on. And Kamala Harris very smartly was like, same old playbook, who cares? Let's move on, let's talk about you. So this is the first time he said something outrageous, disgusting, insane enough that it did send everybody into a tizzy. And so he likes being in that situation again where he gets to control the narrative. But yeah, it's not the same as 2016. Because this is, yes, it feeds into a conversation about immigration, but I would argue it actually undercuts your position on immigration because you're not talking about this as an economic issue. You're not talking about this as a housing issue. You're talking about it in an incredibly, racist way. And so people look at this and go, oh, that's what this is actually all about. So the framing on the issue is the polar opposite of what you would want. And number two, it validates the Democratic frame of these people are just weird. They're just a bunch of weird freaks. And when they're Googling you with pets and dogs and cats and whatever, and you think it's great that people are making TikToks making fun of you, you don't even see that they're mocking you to your face. You think this is wonderful for you. But the reality is that this actually just validates the Democratic framing, the way they have wanted, the lens they've wanted to apply to you. So being the main character in this instance, not always the thing that you ultimately want.
The reason I'm just not willing to is I'm a cynical person, and I think that there's a lot of people out there who may like it. I think that there are people who really enjoy the media getting upset, and liberals. I think that, look, there's a decent enough evidence on the immigration question as well that a lot of people who care about immigration don't care about economics at all. They're worried about demographic change.
Those people already voted for Trump.
Yes, but, let's say it's not even about swaying. It's about getting those people out to vote. Maybe that's enough to get them off the couch, or their relatives. The immigration situation has been crazy enough that, maybe it's enough that for them to forgive that or to think about this whole policy thing. Again, I don't see evidence for that, but I'm not going to discount that possibility. He has turned out people
I'm going to discount that possibility. The other thing here,
he did win. In 2016, he won.
He won in 2016.
Put that out of my
he
mind.
lost but he's been losing ever since. Lost in 2018, lost in 2020, lost in 2022. This guy does not have the touch in the sense that he used to. And this will fit in with, the conversation we're about to have about Laura Loomer. His posture in 2016 was tabloid.
Yeah.
It was sensationalist. It was New York Post, right? It was the tabloid, finger on the pulse in a raunchy, over-the-top, obnoxious way, but yeah, finger on the pulse. Then in 2020, he's like Fox News grandpa, which there still is a large appetite for in the country, right? Mainstream sort of conservative Fox News grandpa talking points. That's good enough to get him close. Now it's like Truth Social or like, you know, the weird echo chambers on Twitter, listening to Laura Loomer, taking advice from her as if she's a positive asset for your campaign. I just think he's completely lost the plot. And Dave Weigel tweeted this, which I think is really true. He's like, sometimes you're living rent-free in your opponent's head because you pissed your pants and they think it's really funny. Yeah. Like, not all publicity is good publicity. And we already know from the polls we just covered, this did not go well for him. Like, it did not go well for him. The more people were familiar with the debate and things that he had to say in the debate, like the pets thing, the less inclined they are to support Donald Trump. So in a sense, like, the verdict is already in with the polling and what has come out of that. She's narrowed the gap on the economy. She's even narrowed the gap on immigration and who people think would be better on that issue. She was seen as she's improved in favorability. Donald Trump has fallen in favorability post-debate. The polling has been almost uniformly better for her. So, like, I sort of feel like the jury is already in with the data that we already have. And you could say these polls are all off.
That's my point.
But we're looking at polls. We're looking at the trend line. Right? And so even if you say a given poll is off in their methodology, if the trend line moved in her direction, that still is representative or reflective of a real change that actually happened, given that they're using the same methodology each time.
But if he wins, what is he going to take away from this? What are him and JD going to take away from this? I mean, if you win the election, you know, and you pursue this, you get put back into the White House. I mean, I think that's, frankly, like, we all need to grapple with that then. We're like, okay, well, we're going to have some 2016 ever conversations again about, like, all right, clearly there's something going on here. You know, people are, again.
It could also be, though, in spite of this, not because of this, but.
Possible.
Yeah.
At the very least, when you win, all sins are forgiven. And so if you look at it and you think about it, if they win based on this, I would say it actually gives them the leeway to do whatever they want. They can say, listen, we've said this, we got away with this. Americans, when we told our directional truths, they listened. So mass deportation on the table. Any family separation back on the table. We're not listening to the media criticism. We're not listening to any of this bullshit anymore. We're unhinged. And frankly, I don't think they would be wrong. You know, if they do win the election, even when they were conducting themselves this way and all that, I think it tells you something pretty clear about where things are going. You may not like that direction, but it's very possible. So I guess I'm just, this is a test of political theories. My theory is that you should not lie to people, do the directional truth. My theory is that constantly trying to validate, you know, this partisan bullshit, like, no offense, Christopher Rufo, but this whole thing about, like, oh, well, some African guys 45 miles away barbecued a cat in 2023. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what we're talking about here.
But and that's not even potentially reality.
Okay,
but anyway, you paid $5,000. Yeah,
listen,
whatever.
Regardless of whether it's true or not, I'm just like, but that's not actually what he said. That's not what they said. They said X, Y, and Z. Now, I mean, I think politicians should have to tell the truth. I think that when they say things based on quote unquote anecdotal evidence as, you know, as backing up allegedly, you know, I'll put it this way. Just because some of your constituents said that X, Y, and Z was true, you know, JD keeps saying it. My constituents keep saying this is true. My constituents keep
also,
saying
he hasn't produced evidence of, but go on. Yeah,
but
even if that's the case.
That's not a good enough standard to come out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Like, your extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. You have to be able to, and also as a politician, I mean, part of the reason that we don't live in a quote unquote direct democracy and we do live in a republic is this idea that the founding fathers had of mediation between the whims and the movement of the mob and considered people. That's specifically the entire job of the United States Senate, is to cool the temperature of the country, to provide due diligence and deliberation around where things are. Now, throughout our history, there has been deep vacillation between wanting the diligent, the professor, the Obama, and then the id, people like Donald Trump or many other populists, not even at the national level, at the state level too. So I could be, again, they could be right. Like, they really could be running some sort of Richard Nixon style 1968 silent majority. The media treated Nixon the same way. The problem I have is I read about Nixon. Nixon probably had like a 160 IQ. He might be one of the smartest people who has ever held the Oval Office. He was a lot more disciplined. He was a lot more considered. Sure, his morals weren't always there necessarily, but I think he was a very smart man, a very calculating man, and in many cases, he was a very good president. So I don't see the same the same link between them. But they have a theory, and the theory has worked. I mean, anybody who can win the Oval, that's something. That's something that I know, because in that moment I said, how could this man ever get elected? And he did. So, I mean, it shattered my political consciousness for all time.
Yeah.
So I can never just sit here and just be like, no, I don't think it's going to work. Because I really believe I could be totally wrong about the way that I view the public. And I've been proved wrong on the show so many different times.
The theory they have of Americans is deeply cynical.
Yeah, but they might be right.
Because I mean, think about what they've incited in this town, not just against the legal, by the way, Haitian residents of this town, but against the whole town. You have the mayor, you have the governor begging for them to stop, because now it's not just Haitians who go to those elementary schools that have been subject to bomb threats. It's not just Haitians that want to seek treatment at the hospital that's been subject to bomb threats. It's not just Haitians that are like under siege in this little Ohio town that J.D. Vance, by the way, represents as his constituents. It's this entire town. And so, yeah, their bet is that actually the core concerns that people have about immigration are not actually about housing, wages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The things that you talk about, Saagar, it's not actually about that. It's actually just like racist. We don't like these people because they're different and we want them out. And so we're gonna play into that. We're gonna lean into that. That's the bet that they're making. And I just don't believe that. I don't think most Americans want to see themselves as racist. I don't think they want to have their policy views or who they vote for president driven by just like explicit racist fear-mongering. And so it's too naked, right? It's too mask off. And this is what the conversation we had about the like Kamala Harris, she turned black thing too, where I was like, this is not gonna work because it's too naked a racial appeal. And most people, you got your people out there who are cool with that. Unfortunately, that is a reality that exists and has always existed in America and probably always will exist. The overwhelming majority of Americans really do believe in like the best ideal of the melting pot. They don't want to see themselves as explicitly sexist, racist, xenophobic, whatever. And you're kind of stripping them of plausible deniability here with this whole Haitian pet situation. So that's why I think, to me, it's just very clear that this is a fail, that it's already a fail. And I'm not saying that it doesn't mean he can't win, but if he does, it will be in spite of this, because we already see the way the poll numbers have moved against him post-debate when this became the center of conversation.
The counter is simple. The counter is that rapid demographic change doesn't mean that you're racist. It means that you want control over that. You have an uncontrolled system. I mean,
that's
look,
not what they're saying.
No. But I'm saying look, if you get somebody to vote for Trump in spite of this on the immigration question, it's going to be this. All right, I got two choices. I got a candidate who we had more illegal immigrants enter the country under their reign than a decade before. We have the highest level of the foreign-born population since the 1900s. We have ethnic strife. Do we want to live in a balkanized America of ethnic enclaves in various different cities where half of these people don't speak any English? The vast majority of them are semi-literate. They don't have a high school degree. I mean, by the way, these Haitians, these people are here under TPS, which is supposed to be temporary. Well, they're not even supposed to be here forever.
We don't actually even, some of them, I'm sure that's true for some of them. Some of them, the indication from the mayor and other authorities, they actually have been here for years. They moved into the town from other places because there were job opportunities. So, I mean,
the ones, okay, listen.
So, but I'm saying, not to nitpick,
when you call somebody
clarify.
a migrant, that implies forever, permanence. They're here under TPS, which is supposed to be, they're supposed to go back. So when are you going back? And that's part of the problem. In America, we have an immigration system where you can just come here and say, oh, I'm here for my life, and you get to stay here forever. Basically, even if the court tells you to leave, you don't have to leave. There's no enforcement. You're in a town of Springfield, Ohio. You're, 60,000 people. Your mayor and your leaders have decided to invite others. You didn't necessarily sign up for that. The federal government puts you there. And you say, listen, this is intolerable to me. I don't want to live this way. Now, look, my parents are immigrants, so this is complicated. But all I need to do is go back and read enough history where let's put yourself in the shoes of these waspy elites or others, and it's 1830. You're in this newly industrialized economy. You're previously an agrarian society. You and your parents, your family goes back to Jamestown or fought in the Revolutionary War, and now your whole neighborhood is Irish, and people are wasted all the time, beating the crap out of their wives, working at the factory. I mean, listen, is it legitimate?
You're pulling out the anti-Irish bigotry this
Krystal,
morning.
they passed prohibition because these people were drinking a liter of whiskey
Tell me about the
a day.
Italians, the Jews.
I'll tell
what
you
was
that's
the problem with them.
No, I didn't say there's a problem.
They
I'm saying
integrated.
Okay, yes,
but you're
after
making
we shut down immigration
No.
for 50 years.
But this is the point, is every single wave of migration we've had, like there have been, similar fear-mongering about these, and they'll never integrate, and they'll never learn the language, and they'll never be part of society. We're gonna have these balkanized ethnic enclave neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. And every single time, guess what? Generation later, they're just American. Their kids are speaking English. They're eating McDonald's. They're doing the whole thing. You talk to the people in the town, not the ones that right-wing YouTubers were interviewing that were calling the Haitian immigrants, quote unquote, sand monkeys. Yes, this was proffered as evidence that this was legitimate, that this was a legitimate criticism. But if you talk to a lot of the people in the town, this was a town that was struggling. Right? It was like the town that I lived in Ohio, where the jobs had gone away. They had seen a massive population, a depopulation. And that's death for a town. It's death for, the infrastructure. It's death for the tax base, the schools, everything. I don't doubt that there are entirely legitimate concerns about, when a group, whatever group it is, wherever they come from, moves into the town, just like in Texas and Austin, right? And other places where white people have moved in, and it's like, oh shit, the housing prices are going up, et cetera, et cetera. I don't doubt that there have been challenges there, but there have also been really positive things. The pastors are saying, hey, the churches are full again. You've had a huge community rallying around actually the Haitian migrants to the region, white people eating at the Haitian restaurants to show solidarity.
All right, that I object. Haitian food is not good, but
Haitian,
I'll move on.
I
the plantations
disagree.
Plantains? Yeah, whatever it is. I had it when I was in Miami.
Disagree.
I'm like, sorry, this is terrible.
But in any case, you and I see this very differently. That's been very clear in our discussions before. But to go back to just the political point here, I just don't think that the reality for most Americans is that they experience in their daily lives this sense of deep ethnic and racial strife. That's just not the reality. And Americans have complicated views on immigration, I think more complicated than the views in Europe, because we do have this conception and this reality as a nation of immigrants, and that is a core American value. So while it's completely legitimate to have debates about how many immigrants and how many can we process and what are the burdens on the resources, et cetera, this sort of naked racial appeal, I already think the data proves it's a bridge too far for people, and it's not the way that they think about the issue.
A lot of people like to think that. I don't necessarily believe it. I think that if anything, pouring all of these illegals into the country over the last 5 years has probably exacerbated it to a level which, as I don't necessarily want to see. And that's just my last counter, is that at the end of the day, you have massive foreign-born population here in the country that has always led to major strife. Now, you can just whitewash 50 years of history, but that's not how people saw it at the time. People, we were fighting World War I. The Irish population didn't want to fight because we were supporting the English, and they were like, hey, we fled the English. The Germans were literally pro-Kaiser during World War II.
We really fought World War I.
Okay,
anyway,
fine. Okay, well, during World War II,
they were right.
There was a massive Nazi fifth column here in the United States because of the German population. Ask the SS, who had great files on all of our people. There is a problem. Now, does that mean that Japanese people should have been thrown in an internment camp and Germans and all of them should have been racially discriminated against? No. What I'm saying is foreign-born populations at very, very high levels cause real strife inside of a country. People at that time responded to it by shutting down the border for 50-some years and restricting immigration so that all of those people could assimilate, which led to the golden boom of the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. It was only in 65 that the Immigration Naturalization Act changed after some 50 years of assimilative policy that was instituted. If you want to live in a society that you and I probably want to live in, more socially democratic, in Denmark, for example, if you're Muslim, you don't get to play the Quran. If you're in school, they're like, oh, you're Muslim? That's cool. We don't do that here. In France, same thing. You're not wearing that hijab, and they have major problems with that. If you want to live in a socially democratic country, a lot of the times they have deeply restrictive immigration policy, specifically over resource questions and over ethnic homogeneity. I'm not saying that everybody has to look the same. I think people should speak the same. So when people come here and the vast majority of them are semi-literate in Spanish and they don't speak English, it's a huge problem. Like, you can't even pass a test to be able to enter under the most basic citizenship guidelines? No, sorry. Well, you have to speak English to be able to come here. I don't think that's racist. You could call it that if you wanted, and that's part of the issue, is that everything that gets described as racist, or even talking about ethnic conflict, or everyone, I don't think it's racist to say that there were a lot of people here who were huge drunks. A lot of them were immigrants in the 1910s. We passed prohibition because of them, because America was so fed up, and including women who were all getting the crap beaten out of them. You can whitewash that if you want. Go listen to the people at the time who passed those laws. Like, you have to think and consider about what is legitimate and not. And so I don't think it's necessarily racist. Now, some people are racist.
Saagar,
it's true.
Again, the points about what should the level of immigration be, over what period of time, I think it should be a lot more. You think it should be 0, okay? By the way,
I think we should shut
the public does not support your position. But again, I think
let 10 million people in more and you'll see.
Hold on. I think those points are a fine debate for a country to have. I do not think it is a fine debate to to invite a campaign of terror against a small town based on, yes, racist, neo-Nazi fueled, by the way. These were the people that originally were spreading the rumors.
Was one
about
guy who was in
Haitians eating pets. That is racist, okay? And that's my point. That's my point, is that when Trump, if Trump was making a case and Republicans were making a case, as they were previously, about like too many and chaos at the border and crime, which again, undocumented immigrants commit less crime than the native-born population, and actually less crime than documented immigrants, put that aside.
Okay.
But again, when you're in that realm, you're talking about housing, you're talking about, the issues in this, okay. But when you make a naked racist appeal that is undeniable, right? It's not even plausible on its face, and it's just a lie, you are going to lose people, and you're going to lose ground on the issue. And again, I don't even think this is my opinion. This is what the polls and the data show at this point. But, to go back to the core of the debate here, like, this town is kind of a model example, right? I mean, this is an extreme situation. There's some dispute, by the way, about the 20,000 figure, but we'll put that aside. There was a significant influx of migrants to the town. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt that there have been, I think the issues with, a lot of the Haitian immigrants there hadn't previously driven, and there's traffic accidents. There has been some increase in housing prices, although that has also been wildly overstated. There's been an increase in burden on the public school, in particular needing second language learning. Those are real concerns. But there also has been a huge increase in the vitality and prosperity of the area, huge increase in terms of the average wage. Again, I've lived in one of these towns that's dying and the population is getting sucked down. And it's a huge boon to have new population coming in, which is something conservatives recognize when it's Florida that's receiving the population and it's white people, right? Or Texas receiving the population and it's white people. But suddenly when it's, Haitians, some of whom, again, have been here for years, suddenly it's, a massive crisis and a massive problem. And there's no recognition of any of the many benefits that do exist on the other side. It's not
because they're white. It's because they're illegally here.
They're not, though. The Haitians are not illegally here.
They're given TPS, which is a bullshit program.
But that's not. But that is different to say I object to the program.
If I wave a wand and say it should be illegal,
to
then
say
all of a sudden
it's a program I object to is totally different from saying that they're illegally here. They are not illegally here.
They are here under false pretenses. Number one,
it's not false pretenses.
Yes, because they're fleeing from a temporary situation and they never want to go back. A temporary situation
that we are very much implicated, by the way, in creating over 200 years.
Everybody in the world gets to come.
But Saagar, they're not there illegally. They're there legally. They are in a lot of ways like the model minority group. They've got jobs, they're working hard, they're going to church, they're building community institutions. They followed the process that was set out for them by this government. They're here legally. And so, no, you look at it and, maybe you can nitpick about, okay, but they, some of them don't speak English or whatever. But it seems to me the primary difference,
Springfield, Ohio.
the primary difference in not recognizing any of the upsides of this population is that they're not white.
Yeah, you're totally right, but it's not about being white. It's about the fact that the factory owners love cheap labor. I was just talking to somebody who was down there as a reporter. He's telling
They're
me
making good wages.
yes, they're making good wages, which is which is less than they were paying the native-born citizens.
But that's
The
why we
rich
should-
factory
but it-
guys like, oh, it's great. I don't have to deal with these white drug
Saagar,
addicts.
let me take you out of
Yeah.
it because you support things like unions. But, J.D. Vance has a 0% scoring record with the AFL-CIO.
Okay.
Trump is a union buster. No, but hold on.
He showed
but
up
hold
to
on,
the
hold on, hold on.
UAW.
But hold on a second. Republicans only care about things like wages and housing when they can use it as a way to scapegoat migrants. If you care about wages, which I do, then there are a lot better ways to increase the wages of the native-born population than scapegoating migrants and lying and say they're eating pets. If you care about lowering the price of housing, making it more affordable, accessible, there are a lot better ways than scapegoating immigrants and saying they're eating pets. So I think their concern on this issue is not genuine. Again, this is not about you. This is about them. Their concern on this issue is not genuine. And the reason I know that is because none of their other policy prescriptions or stated concerns have to do
But then
with
how does
those
their
issues.
flip not apply to you then? Or
What do you mean?
Well, how does it flip saying, well, if you support mass migration, but just because you vote for the PRO Act, how can you possibly be pro-labor? That's just not true.
Of course it is.
No, but it's not because the net effect is
the-
a massive
The
flood
primary problem for workers in this country is not immigrants. It's not immigrants.
I mean,
In fact,
you should ask
immigrants,
them, but first of all.
the influx in population has increased our GDP. Now, I know.
Yeah, it would
that's
distribute it to
hold
whom?
on.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point.
Yes.
And that's why I support the
Yeah.
policies that I support, to make sure that when the GDP increases, that those fruits, that increased productivity, is distributed more generously among all working class populations. So there are much better solutions to housing and wages than scapegoating immigrants and lying and inciting like a racist hate campaign against this town based on a third-hand Facebook account of
You say
someone eating a
scapegoat.
pet.
Look, in the pet thing, it's not fair. Nobody's defending.
I know you're
the
not
pet thing
defending
here,
that.
But I'm saying that whenever it comes to the legitimate concerns about, like, oh, the factory owner and the mayor likes it. Listen, since when have we ever trusted factory owner, rich people in towns?
This was a
the Chamber of
Democrat. Hold on, this was a
Commerce?
democratically elected mayor.
Yeah, sure.
They have a chance to vote him out of office, and they don't
you're not
because
wrong.
the town has been, in certain key ways, not every way, but in certain ways, has been improved by the fact that you've had more jobs, more vitality. These immigrants who are there legally are contributing to the community, are paying their taxes, by all accounts, are, by and large, minding their business and doing their thing and being good neighbors. And that piece that I'm not going to deny that there is that there's friction and there's growing pains and all of those things are real. I'm not dismissing that. I'm not saying that you're racist if you think that. That's, I'm sure, a reality. But you also can't ignore that there have been benefits to having this population
yes,
there,
there
just
are
as there have been
benefits.
benefits of the white people that moved to Austin or that moved to Florida or wherever,
again,
that
though, the
created
fundamental
additional vitality for those areas too.
Well, the fundamental difference is those are legal U.S. citizens, and these people are not. Now, maybe these Haitians
are there
here
legally.
Well, okay. Well, we'll see. You know what? When we legally are required to send them back, I hope that we also do. But second to this is the simple question around managed change, managed demographics. They came here on an unregulated system where anybody in the world who shows up at the southern border and says, I fear for my life, gets to stay here for years on end and gets a work permit because the Biden administration releases them into the country. Trump did it too, so he's not off. So did George W. Bush and the rest. I think that's wrong, especially whenever people who aren't so conveniently at the southern border have to apply and pay a lot of fees, to take a freaking English test. And some other guy from Guatemala gets to come here. He doesn't have to take anything. He gets to work illegally on the back end. But this is the big question. Now, as I said, if Trump wins, I think it will be because of this. I think enough people will look past that. You may call it racist, but they'll say, look, enough.
Wait. Do you not think it's racist?
What,
the
Haitian
pets thing?
I mean, listen.
Saagar.
Okay, when we say racist, what does that mean? Look.
Saagar.
Okay, well, I mean, this is the issue. This is uncomfortable territory. But
It's not uncomfortable. It's very clear.
Well, as Marianne Williamson said, what are we going to ignore that there are like weird practices sometimes in the Haitian community? Like, I'm not saying,
you know,
like,
majority
again, that's
of
not
Haitians
everybody.
share the religion of J.D. Vance and are Catholic.
Which are, yeah, okay, but there's Santeria, which is a well-documented thing and has had a long time influence
Saagar,
in Caribbean communities.
To take a third-hand lie and smear an entire community
Yeah, I
with
think
it.
that was wrong.
That is the definition of racism.
I mean, listen, I'm
Tell
just
me your
reluctant-
definition of racism and how it does not apply to the
The
situation.
definition of racism is explicitly being biased against someone purely because of their race. And I don't necessarily think that that's where we're at here. Now, do I think that we are in a situation, I mean, look, is it biased? Is it, I'm trying to think of the ways. And look, people could say, oh, he's twisting himself into knots. It's just because my barrier for like what I call racist is high because I think it's a very misused word and frankly kind of stupid.
But sometimes you got to call a spade a spade.
I mean, I
And
think if
when
they
you
said
look
because
at-
they're black, I have a problem with them, yeah, I'd be like, yeah, that's racist. But, you know, to say
When you
like, oh,
take-
there's an issue here in the Haitian community specifically.
when you take an issue and you smear an entire community with it, and which was not even true, it's just a lie.
Yes, it's not true.
I mean,
At least as
that's
far as we
like
know.
textbook racism. And yeah, the term gets thrown around, but sometimes it applies. And it applies pretty clearly here. So, you know, to wrap up, and perhaps since we are going to talk to
we
Zed
have
about
our-
this
we
as
have our
well, and
friend
we got to
Zed
get
to
on to the
talk
rest of the
about.
show, and we're going to
Sorry.
have more conversations about immigration, et cetera, which I know you all appreciate, and I enjoy exchanging with you on this as well. But to wrap it up, the reason that I think this is a clear political fail, the whole pet thing is a clear political fail for Trump, is I just don't think that Americans are this racist. I just don't. I think that they see this as disgusting. I think we have the polling that shows they know that it's not true. They know that it's a lie. People don't like being lied to either. And so, you know, whatever valid concerns there are about immigration, sure, fine. You're actually undercutting your position on that by front-loading with just like this explicitly racist, neo-Nazi-backed lie.
Without taking your words, I will say I think it's a mistake to generally wager her whole reputation on this whole Haitian thing. I'd much rather have a lot of the talk that I just gave around demographics and management and all of that. But, you know, at the same time, listen, I mean, they're the ones who got themselves elected. Maybe they know something that I don't. I'm not Pollyanna-ish to believe that everybody thinks about these things the way that I do, or the so-called better angels. I think a lot of that is fake, to be honest. And so we'll find out on the ballot box. And if they win, I actually do think a lot of it is, basically all of it will come back to immigration. And if that's true, then I think liberals should ask themselves a lot of questions. Now, if they lose too, we should also talk a lot about the way that when you can be on a winning side of an issue and how you screw that up. And there's probably a lot of evidence here if they lose the election on this. And I would hope that they take that away if they do lose. But knowing them, that's certainly not what's
on
going
the
to happen.
table.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.